a physical location that are leasing rather than owning their building. Uh, that hasn't always been the case. And it continues to get on this theme of an assault on your freedom to be able to decide how you make a living, which includes owning your small business. The assault on ownership. I go back to, I talked about it with the home prices and home ownership, where back in the 1980s, early 1980s, the average house, the average home price was 3 times the median income. And then now today it's 7 times median income. And so we've built this debt society for ourselves and this renter society, lease society. And what happens is if you then don't have ownership in this country that you're living in and you're renting everything and you own nothing, then how much are you going to care about this place that you're living in? How much are you going to care about the building if you own it compared to if you rent it? There has to be a change here moving forward, because I go back to America's future is a small business renaissance. I believe that, made possible by free market capitalism. And I do not want this freedom of you being able to decide how you make a living, which includes owning your small business, to be taken away. And there is an assault. I think of the appetizer to the main meal, socialism and communism, where the roads lead to the abolition of private property. And so when someone has equity in a community, then they're going to care about it more. They're going to want to make sure, thinking about the long term, that they're thinking about how to take care of it for the long term, so that the quality can continue to be there, the value can continue to be there, and that's if it's in the building that their business is located, to their community that the building is in, to our country overall. And we gotta make changes. There's a lot of work here. The system has been abused, has been taken advantage of, but it doesn't mean we have to destroy the system completely. And that is where, when someone gets desperate, you can go to radical ideas. And I go to this line when I heard it, it woke me up, which is economic disorder will lead to political radicalism. And as small business owners, you have a powerful voice, but you got to get out of your small world and realize what's going on a national level, and realize what the national conversation is relating to capitalism and relating to what can affect your day-to-day life, which is your ability to own your small business. And as a supporter of small business owner and small businesses, it's reminding yourself out there of what right now are the major challenges that are coming up that we've got to address. And that's where I need your help. I need your help to know what those are for those challenges, and to make changes in our economy, to be able to move forward. And when we unite, the voice continues to get stronger and stronger, and change can happen quickly. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take a lot of work, but we together can be able to move forward. And this movement is a determined movement. Massively determined movement. I think about that, and it's continuing to grow, and it's through your support that this movement is able to continue to grow. So thank you. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the show. Pumped to go live with you guys again. I want to set the stage for the history of how we got to this point. And I want to start it off with today's show of just breaking it down for decades and setting the stage here for areas that we got to focus more attention on. This is where you can take the time to dive into it. Or if you have experience with this, then it'd be great to get your insights on this as well. Because the first one was your help with this, I've seen as high as 80% are leasing for small businesses rather than owning the building that their business is located in. And so I want to know what your experience has been like if you currently have you have a business that's in a physical location. So let me start with, again, commercial real estate is what I want to get into, specifically CREs. And then for specifically landlords, so small business CRE landlords represent over 80% of all CRE landlords. And what I could find is like the average property is 1 to 3 buildings, 2 to 5 units. You think of like neighborhood storefronts, strip malls, downtowns. So that's what I could find. I'm curious if you're in this industry. And for me, I am a market guy. I believe in markets, and I also believe in figuring out where is there industries that maybe maybe making things more complicated than they have to be. Because again, it's like thinking of how it used to be small business owners before 1940s. You think of most downtown shops, restaurants, barbers, pharmacists. You'd have the business owner commonly would own the building that their business is in by living upstairs, and then the business is downstairs. Think of like a furniture store on the bottom level, and then you're living in the top level with you and your family. But then there was also some local landlords as well who would live upstairs or nearby. And then mortgages were short in comparison to how they are now, and it's a good reminder that was a way things were. Now, when I come back to ownership and the importance of ownership, it's like, where could there be an opportunity here to change things up? If that's disrupting industry, and getting back into how do we get small businesses, let's say restaurant owners, to own their building, or store retail owners, how do we get them to own their building again? That is a conversation we've got to continue to have and talk about that, and not just say let's keep things as they are, because change has got to happen. The results are terrible right now. You think about that. There's a lot to be hopeful for, and there's a lot of determination. But you think of even on a national level, debt is over $38 trillion. Like, this debt society that we built ourselves on is a big problem that we've got to address. So you had the World War II that happened. And then from 1945 to like 1965, you got the highway development, the new shopping centers and malls that are being created. And I go to 1956. This is the first fully enclosed, climate-controlled mall. And it is Southdale Center that's still in operation, which is really, yeah, it was interesting to see that in Minnesota for this first ever fully enclosed, climate controlled mall. I may have to take a visit there. Like, that's an idea to go check that out. But what this did is it created a new model where you can, the term to remember is retail clustering, and it's where you can create a powerful commercial destination. And so like a benefit for the business is you have more foot traffic coming in, or if you have competitors nearby, someone could be coming in for one of your products. And instead of them saying, should I get this product or not? Then they're looking at, okay, which store do I go to for it? And so it can move the purchasing decision faster. But the challenge with this is then the model was these small businesses are going to lease the space rather than own the building. And then with these bigger malls, you're looking at businesses that you think of like these big department stores. You're looking for also those more of a focus towards those businesses, because there's potentially less risk involved because the business is more established and is bigger. So that's where there started to be some friction and tension that started to happen with your mom and pop store. And as these malls became more popular, that's where there was this erosion happening, where it was becoming more difficult for then small business owners, mom and pop independent small businesses to get some of these prime locations in these malls. And then we move into the 1950s to the 1970s. And this is where we get into real estate investment trusts, REITs. And this was created by Congress in 1960s. But what happened is development for retail space, ballooned. It grew rapidly. And then what happened was getting into lease types. This is where what you can remember for lease types. I'm going to get into this more. Again, I'm setting the stage for today's show. But with these real estate investment trusts, it's like they preferred long-term triple net leases. That's a term you can remember. So this is more towards chains and franchises. And what this lease is like it lasts 10 to, it can last from 10 to 20 or even more years. And the business will not just pay for the rent, the base rent, but then will also pay for the property's operating expenses. And so that can include taxes, include insurance and maintenance. And you get into negotiations for that, and you can negotiate better rates for the base rental or base rate or base rent. And then also that can create future deals moving forward. And with chains and franchises, it's not just a one store, mom and pop. They're going to have multiple locations, and you can start to see where the preference can move towards these chains and franchises. But then you have to remember some other types of leases that are out there. So you have modified gross lease, which is base plus utilities. That or other like cleaning services could be part of that for the modified gross lease. Then you got a percentage lease is another one. So this is where you have lower base and then a percentage of your sales once you hit like a breaking point in your sales. And then you have a gross lease, which is just a single flat monthly rent. So if you are a small business owner that is currently renting or currently leasing your building, which lease do you have? I'm curious about that because this is what I could find, but I want to know which one seems to be the most popular and most common is what I'm thinking with this. So that would be interesting. I'm going to dive more into the real estate investment trust. That seems to be another show for sure of what happened there in the 1960s. And then where that led to, developers building, ballooning for building these retail spaces. It'd be interesting to dive more into that. So then you go from like the 1970s to 1980s, and this is where we get into commercial mortgages, securities. And with this one, or mortgage-backed securities, commercial mortgage-backed securities. This is interesting for me to dive more into this because it goes back to the loan, it goes back to loans, it goes back to debt, and this debt society we built ourselves on, and how there was a focus more on larger institutions or larger, what's the word I'm trying to come up with here? It's not coming to me, but you think of these franchises and chain models. By having this change in the 1970s, 1980s with the commercial mortgage-backed securities, had a big impact on then the growth of franchises and chain models in the 1980s and 1990s. Like those started to open rapidly. There's a big surge. This is where you get into then the triple net leases, which just pushed the friction to the extreme for these small businesses to even be able to get like prime location in you think of your local cities and towns. It became more difficult to get the prime location. And then looking at the 1980s to 2000s, you got property taxes. And this is where sale to leasebacks became common. And this is where you sell the building, then you get a lease to then have still your space for a business. And that just continued to erode away the ownership for small business owners. And then even I go back to the 1980s, you think about, I talked about this before with the 1981 Economic Recovery Tax Act, 1986 Tax Reform Act, getting into the depreciation extension for these properties and the effect that had on tax benefits of small business owners owning their building, and how that minimized the benefit over the long term, and the impact that had on then deciding to sell rather than hold on for next generations. I want to continue to get more into that focus too. But then we get into like the 1990s and the 2000s. The other part of that outside of property taxes is private equity. And then institutional buyers in this space. But again, what has come up, I said it before, is that there is an aging population of landlords. And so there is an opportunity here to figure out how to move forward with small businesses to buy back their buildings. If that is first right of refusal in the lease of if this building goes up for sale, there's an opportunity to buy. Is there an opportunity in the mortgage with mortgages of how to create opportunities for small businesses to buy their buildings and to make that more efficient in that process? But there's a few different potential paths that we can go down, but I want to get your feedback on what your experience has been like in specifically relating to leases. If you own your building or if you lease for where your business is located, and then your experience with the taxes as well. Like that's another thing, and tax benefits if you are a small business owner that owns your building. I do want to know that more of what that experience has been like, and to see what changes can be made. Because as I said, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of changes to be made, but this sets the stage for you for how we got to this point. And now it's going to be diving deeper into each one of these areas, learning, starting to create the connection points too of where was the focus on the short-term problem. And then in the long term, it just created even more problems because we can tend to overcomplicate things so much. And where there can be unnecessary industries that formed, and where as a country can we move forward in economic growth and in equity, more equity for American citizens in this country, because what that will lead is then to more care for the country that you live in, more pride in your communities that you're part of, and then from there, continuing to have this country be a beacon for the rest of the world. And I think about this of the West was built here in the West. And I said it before, this is the greatest country in the world. We've got to continue to preserve the freedoms that we have on an individual level. One of them is a freedom of speech, to be able to share the truth and seek out the truth and communicate that even when it gets really, really uncomfortable. And so there's so much to preserve here, a lot of changes to be made, but we do not have to resort to the destruction and the destruction of the system. Because as I said before, the system going to capitalism, it has raised billions of people out of poverty around the world in the last 100 years. It has been abused. It's been rigged for decades. And so change is going to happen here. But we can focus on improvements and ways to support younger generations and not continue to live in this debt society that we built for ourselves. So thank you for your support in this movement. Excited to reconnect again tomorrow, and happy early Thanksgiving.